What if I told you that King Charles has just made the most dramatic royal decision of the century, one that completely erases Prince Harry's status from the royal family forever? In a move that has left the world in shock, King Charles has officially revoked all of Prince Harry's royal titles and privileges, effectively ending his status within the monarchy. It's the final blow in a saga marked by family betrayal, public scandals, and relentless media scrutiny. But why now? And what does this mean for the future of the royal family? Inside Buckingham Palace, secret meetings have been held, decisions have been made, and history is being rewritten. Today, we take you behind the scenes of the dramatic downfall, uncovering the hidden conversations, the power struggles, and the unprecedented step that reshapes the monarchy as we know it. Stay with us, because what we reveal next will change everything you thought you knew about the House of Windsor. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The winds of change have swept through the corridors of Buckingham Palace, carrying with them an announcement that would leave the world in stunned silence. It was a decision no one truly saw coming, even as whispers of tension and unrest simmered beneath the surface. King Charles III, known for his steady composure and commitment to duty, had finally reached a breaking point. In a move that would redefine his reign and ripple through the royal family, he made the unprecedented decision to revoke all of Prince Harry's royal titles and privileges, effectively ending his formal status as a member of the British monarchy. The public had grown accustomed to drama surrounding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, but nothing could prepare them for this. In a televised address, the king, framed by the solemn grandeur of the palace's grand hall, delivered the decree with a voice that barely betrayed the deep well of emotion behind his stoic mask. The message was clear, the tone unwavering. The Duke of Sussex was no longer a royal in any official capacity. The gravity of the situation sank in slowly. How had it come to this? Was it a final attempt to preserve the dignity of the monarchy, or a deeply personal retaliation from a father feeling betrayed? As the dust settled, opinions collided in households across Britain and beyond, with one burning question dominating every conversation: why now? To understand why King Charles made such a drastic decision, one must delve into the deeper, unspoken dynamics within the royal family. The relationship between Charles and Harry had always been complex. As a young prince, Harry looked up to his father, often seen at public engagements with a youthful energy that complemented Charles's more reserved demeanor. But the bond that seemed so unbreakable slowly eroded under the weight of personal choices, public scrutiny, and the fierce glare of the media spotlight. The seismic shift truly began when Harry and Meghan made the groundbreaking decision to step back as senior royals in 2020. The so-called Megxit sent shockwaves through the establishment, but few anticipated the ripple effects it would have on Charles's relationship with his youngest son. At first, the king remained hopeful that the move would be temporary, a chance for Harry to find peace away from the pressures of royal duty. But as months turned into years, it became clear that Harry and Meghan were not merely seeking distance. They were crafting a new identity. The couple's explosive interviews, particularly the one with Oprah Winfrey, painted the royal family in a harsh light, alleging racism, neglect, and indifference to mental health struggles. The accusations struck at the heart of the monarchy's public image, leaving King Charles to navigate the fallout while maintaining a semblance of unity. Behind closed doors, the situation was far more volatile. Charles, known for his patience and devotion to his duties, found himself caught between his role as a monarch and his duty as a father. Could he afford to let personal grievances disrupt the sanctity of the crown? Or was it time to put the monarchy first, even at the expense of family ties? The final blow came not from a single incident, but from a pattern of actions that seemed to challenge the very foundations of the monarchy. Prince Harry's relentless media engagements, from Netflix series to podcast interviews, kept royal controversies in the spotlight. Each revelation was like a dagger to the heart of tradition, and while Charles publicly maintained a neutral stance, insiders reported a growing frustration within the palace walls. Then came the tipping point. A documentary featuring Meghan and Harry accused palace aides of systematically undermining the couple's reputation, hinting at an orchestrated campaign to discredit them. This narrative did not sit well with Charles. The monarchy's code of silence had always been its armor, and to have one of its own perpetuate such damaging claims was intolerable. For King Charles, it was no longer just about familial discord. It was a matter of preserving the institution itself. In a series of private meetings with senior courtiers, Charles made it clear that he could no longer protect Harry from the consequences of his choices. The crown had been jeopardized one too many times. On a crisp morning, as journalists gathered outside the gates of Buckingham Palace, an official statement was released. The words were carefully chosen, devoid of sentiment yet resonant with finality. Effective immediately, Prince Harry would no longer hold any royal titles, privileges, or duties. The Duke of Sussex was, in official terms, no longer a prince. In his address, King Charles emphasized the importance of upholding the dignity of the monarchy. His tone was resolute, his words unyielding. He spoke of duty, legacy, and the need to preserve the crown's integrity. Yet, in between the lines, there was a hint of sorrow and acknowledgement that this was not just a political decision but a deeply personal one. Across the Atlantic, Harry and Meghan, settled in their Californian estate, were reportedly blindsided. Sources close to the couple revealed a mix of shock and defiance. They had long since accepted their departure from royal life, but to be officially stripped of titles was an undeniable blow. Harry, once the beloved spare to the heir, was now a commoner in every sense of the word. As news anchors dissected the ramifications of the king's decree, social media erupted into a frenzy. Supporters of the monarchy praised Charles for finally taking a stand, expressing relief that the king had drawn a definitive line. Others, however, saw the move as vindictive, arguing that it was less about protecting the crown and more about punishing a son who had dared to challenge the status quo. In the heart of London, opinion was divided. Some mourned the loss of the charming, rebellious prince they once adored. Others believed that Harry's actions had left the king no choice. Calls to radio shows, opinion pieces in major newspapers, and debates on morning TV painted a picture of a nation grappling with its loyalty to both father and son. Just as the shock was beginning to subside, questions arose about what the future would hold for Harry. Without titles, without the protection and privileges afforded to working royals, what would life look like for him and his family? Speculations ranged from further distancing himself from the royal fold to doubling down on his media presence to maintain relevance. Behind the palace gates, however, King Charles remained resolute. The decision had been made, and for better or worse, he would bear the responsibility. As he looked out over the palace gardens that had witnessed so many royal milestones, he knew that his actions would not only shape his reign but also define his legacy as both a king and a father. Prince Harry's life began under the glittering lights of royalty, marked by pageantry, privilege, and a destiny intertwined with tradition. Born on September 15, 1984, at St. Mary's Hospital in London, his arrival was celebrated not just within the palace walls, but across the entire nation. He was the second son of Prince Charles and Princess Diana, fourth in line to the British throne, and instantly became one of the most photographed infants in the world. The world watched as he grew, each milestone a moment of collective adoration. From his christening in the music room of Buckingham Palace to his playful antics during official family appearances, Harry was the picture of a spirited young prince. But as he grew older, the shadow of royal expectations loomed ever larger. The monarchy, steeped in tradition and bound by centuries of protocol, demanded adherence to a life of duty and restraint. For Prince Harry, this life was both a blessing and a cage. Unlike his elder brother, Prince William, whose path to kingship was clear and structured, Harry's role was more ambiguous. Dubbed the Spare, he was often left to navigate the gray area of royal life, caught between privilege and redundancy. His role was to support the monarchy, to be visible yet secondary, important but not essential. This ambiguity fueled his early years with a sense of rebellion. Harry was often seen as the more spirited of the two brothers, unburdened by the weight of future kingship. While William was groomed for leadership, Harry was left to carve his own path, one that often led to scandal. His teenage years were marked by missteps that splashed across tabloids, underage drinking, wild parties, and the infamous incident where he was photographed wearing a Nazi costume at a private party. The image sent shockwaves through the palace and the public alike, forcing Harry to issue a public apology. Yet, despite his missteps, Harry was beloved. His candidness, his warmth, and his apparent distaste for strict royal protocols made him relatable. He was seen as the people's prince, echoing the spirit of his late mother, Princess Diana. Her tragic death in 1997 left an indelible mark on him. Harry was just 12 years old when he walked behind her coffin, his small frame stiff with grief as the world watched in collective sorrow. It was a moment that defined him, solidifying his image as the vulnerable prince whose wounds were on display for all to see. For many years, Harry struggled to find his place within the royal fold. He joined the British Army in 2005, seeking structure and purpose outside the gilded walls of the palace. It was here, among soldiers, that Harry found a sense of belonging. He trained at the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, where he excelled, proving his worth not as a prince, but as a soldier. His deployment to Afghanistan was a turning point. For the first time, Harry was not just representing the crown. He was serving alongside men and women who had no interest in his royal blood, only his ability to lead and fight. His 2 tours in Afghanistan transformed him. Harry spoke openly about the experience, revealing how it gave him a taste of normalcy and a sense of purpose that had eluded him within the confines of royal life. It was during this time that he began to form his own identity, one separate from his royal title. He returned to the UK a decorated soldier, but the transition back into royal duties was anything but seamless. The rigid expectations of palace life now seemed stifling, and Harry began to publicly voice his struggles with mental health, a move that broke the long-held royal tradition of stoicism and silence. It was this openness that endeared him to the public even more. Harry became a vocal advocate for mental health awareness, co-founding the Heads Together campaign with his brother William and sister-in-law Kate Middleton. His vulnerability was seen as revolutionary, a stark contrast to the stiff upper lip mentality long maintained by the monarchy. Harry was seen not just as a royal, but as a human being grappling with the pressures of fame, family expectations, and personal trauma. Yet, the freedom Harry sought was still out of reach. His royal status came with expectations, appearances, formalities, and the constant scrutiny of the press. Every relationship, every misstep, and every public appearance was dissected by the media. His romantic life was no exception. Tabloids pounced on every rumored relationship, splashing his private affairs across front pages with reckless abandon. His eventual relationship with American actress Meghan Markle would change everything. Their courtship was swift and intense. Harry was smitten, captivated by Meghan's confidence and charm. She was unlike anyone he had dated before, independent, outspoken, and far removed from the traditional circles of British aristocracy. Their engagement was announced in 2017, and the world watched with bated breath as the young prince prepared to marry his American sweetheart. The wedding, held in May 2018, was a spectacle of modernity and tradition, blending British royal customs with touches of American culture. It seemed, for a moment, that Harry had found his place, both within the monarchy and in his personal life. But cracks began to show almost immediately. Meghan's introduction into royal life was met with unprecedented scrutiny. Her every move was analyzed, criticized, and spun into controversy by the media. The palace's attempts to integrate her into the royal fold were clumsy at best, hostile at worst. Rumors of internal conflicts began to circulate, with whispers of tension between Meghan and Kate Middleton dominating headlines. For Harry, the pressure became unbearable. His wife's struggles mirrored his own experiences with media intrusion, yet this time, the stakes were higher. Meghan was not just facing the harshness of public opinion. She was fighting against centuries of tradition that had little tolerance for deviation. The couple's decision to step back from royal duties in 2020 was both shocking and, to those closest to them, inevitable. Dubbed Megxit, the announcement sent shockwaves through the royal establishment. Harry's status as a prince was suddenly in limbo. While he retained his title, his role within the monarchy was dramatically reduced. His military honors were stripped, his public appearances curtailed, and his connection to the royal family visibly strained. He relocated to California with Meghan, embracing a new life that seemed at odds with everything he had known. Despite the distance, Harry continued to speak out, often critically, about his upbringing and the pressures of royal life. In interviews with Oprah Winfrey and through Netflix documentaries, he shared stories that cast the monarchy in an unflattering light. His candor was met with both admiration and outrage, further solidifying the divide between him and his family. It was during this period of estrangement that King Charles began to contemplate the future of the monarchy under his reign. With public support fluctuating and the royal brand suffering under constant media fire, Charles knew that decisive action was necessary. The royal family's image had been marred by scandal and controversy for far too long. The decision to revoke Harry's titles was not made lightly, but it was seen as a necessary step to restore the dignity of the crown. Thus began the unraveling of Prince Harry's royal status, a fall from grace that was as public as it was painful. The young prince who once charmed the world with his cheeky smile and rebellious spirit was now facing the harshest consequence imaginable: complete separation from the institution that had defined his entire life. The relationship between King Charles and Prince Harry had always been under the scrutiny of both the media and royal observers, but few anticipated the degree of estrangement that would unfold over the years. What began as subtle disagreements eventually snowballed into a full-blown rift, one that would challenge not only their familial bond but the very fabric of the British monarchy. This was not just a clash of father and son. It was a battle of ideals, values, and expectations that would ultimately reshape the royal landscape. From the outside, it seemed like any ordinary father-son relationship burdened by misunderstandings and generational differences. But behind palace walls, the tension simmered far deeper than public perception. The initial cracks began to show during Harry's teenage years, where his rebellious streak clashed with Charles's structured, traditionalist approach to royal duty. While William embraced his destiny as the future king, Harry often seemed restless, chafing against the rigid protocols and relentless public expectations. Charles, ever the embodiment of tradition and duty, struggled to understand Harry's desire for freedom and normalcy. To Charles, the crown was not just a symbol of power but a lifelong commitment, an unbreakable vow to serve the people of Britain and uphold the monarchy's legacy. Harry's impulsiveness and disregard for royal decorum were seen not just as youthful rebellion, but as a direct challenge to the stability of the royal institution. The media, always hungry for drama within the House of Windsor, capitalized on every disagreement, every whispered argument, and every frosty public appearance. When Harry wore that infamous Nazi costume to a private party, it wasn't just his image that suffered. Charles, too, bore the weight of public outcry. As father and future king, he was blamed for failing to instill a sense of responsibility and awareness in his son. It was a narrative that would repeat itself time and again, each scandal further widening the chasm between them. But it wasn't just Harry's wild antics that fueled the discord. Charles's long-standing relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles, now queen consort, added a layer of complexity that many outsiders struggled to comprehend. For Harry, whose memories of his late mother Princess Diana remained deeply rooted in his identity, accepting Camilla as part of the family was no simple task. His mother's tragic death, followed by the public revelation of Charles and Camilla's affair, left wounds that never quite healed. Though he maintained public decorum, privately, Harry's resentment simmered, manifesting in subtle slights and distant interactions. When Charles married Camilla in 2005, the rift deepened. Harry attended the wedding, smiling for cameras and shaking hands with dignitaries, but the tension was palpable. Those closest to the family whispered of private disputes and cold interactions. While William had seemingly made peace with the situation, Harry remained visibly detached, attending events out of duty rather than genuine familial affection. As the years passed, Harry's frustrations only grew. His role within the monarchy was ambiguous. He was a prince without a clear purpose, a spare to the heir with no defined path. His charity work and military service brought him fulfillment, but the return to royal life always came with restrictions and expectations that felt suffocating. For Charles, who had spent decades preparing for kingship, Harry's disdain for royal protocol was both baffling and infuriating. How could his son reject the very institution that had given him privilege and influence? The tipping point came with Harry's relationship with Meghan Markle. From the very beginning, Charles was reportedly cautious. He understood the media's unforgiving nature and knew that Meghan's American roots and career as an actress would attract unprecedented scrutiny. His concerns, however, were interpreted by Harry as thinly veiled disapproval. What Charles saw as caution, Harry saw as rejection, not just of Meg. Their wedding in 2018 was a spectacle of grandeur and unity, but behind the scenes, tensions were simmering. Meghan's outspoken nature and refusal to conform to traditional royal norms created ripples throughout the palace. Reports of disagreements between Meghan and Kate Middleton only added fuel to the fire, forcing Charles to play the role of mediator in a family drama that was increasingly spilling into the public eye. Then came the bombshell announcement in January 2020. Harry and Meghan declared their intention to step back as senior members of the royal family, seeking financial independence and the freedom to live outside the constraints of royal duty. For Charles, it was more than just a betrayal. It was an affront to the very institution he had dedicated his life to preserving. The statement was released without Charles's prior knowledge, blindsiding him and sparking a media frenzy. In the ensuing months, private conversations were leaked, further damaging the already fragile relationship. Harry and Meghan's tell-all interview with Oprah Winfrey in 2021 was the final straw. Accusations of neglect, racism, and emotional abandonment were aired publicly, leaving the royal family reeling. For Charles, who had spent a lifetime shielding the monarchy from scandal, the public airing of grievances felt like a personal attack. Reports emerged of shouting matches and terse exchanges. Harry's revelation that his father had stopped taking his calls during their transition to financial independence only solidified the narrative of estrangement. Charles, in turn, felt betrayed, his attempts to support Harry financially and emotionally, even after their departure from royal duties, had gone unacknowledged. The distance grew insurmountable as Harry and Meghan settled into their new life in California, signing deals with Netflix and Spotify, and continuing to speak out about their experiences within the monarchy. Charles, meanwhile, focused on his role as king, preparing for the day he would ascend the throne. Reconciliation seemed increasingly unlikely, each media appearance and public statement further entrenching their positions. The final nail in the coffin came with Harry's book deal, a memoir that promised to reveal intimate details of his life, including his strained relationship with his father. For Charles, this was an unforgivable breach of trust. To expose the inner workings of the royal family to the public was tantamount to treason in his eyes. It was then that Charles began considering the unthinkable, the permanent revocation of Harry's royal titles. Advisors cautioned against it, warning that such a move would be seen as vindictive and could further damage the monarchy's image. But Charles was resolute. The integrity of the crown, he argued, was more important than familial bonds. To restore the public's faith in the monarchy, drastic measures were necessary. For months, the decision was deliberated upon in private, with only the most senior aides aware of the discussions. Finally, the decision was made. Harry would no longer hold his royal titles. The Duke of Sussex would become, for all intents and purposes, a commoner. The announcement was to be made with the weight of royal authority, marking the end of an era and the beginning of a new chapter for both the monarchy and Prince Harry himself. The royal rift between Charles and Harry had reached its inevitable conclusion, not with reconciliation, but with separation. The young prince who once stood beside his father during public engagements, smiling and waving to crowds, was now cast out, severed from the institution that had defined his life. For King Charles, it was a necessary act of preservation. For Harry, it was the ultimate rejection. From the moment Meghan Markle stepped into the royal spotlight, the world watched with rapt attention. An American actress, a humanitarian, and a woman of mixed race, Meghan's arrival at Buckingham Palace was nothing short of revolutionary. To many, she symbolized a breath of fresh air for the monarchy, a progressive step forward in a tradition-bound institution. But for others, she was viewed with skepticism, an outsider disrupting the delicate balance of the royal family. What was clear from the beginning was that Meghan Markle was no ordinary addition to the Windsor fold. Her influence on Prince Harry would be unprecedented, reshaping not only his life but the trajectory of the British monarchy itself. Their courtship was swift and seemingly magical. Harry was captivated by Meghan's charm, her confidence, and her ability to navigate the complexities of royal life with ease. Unlike past royal brides, Meghan did not come from aristocratic lineage, nor was she accustomed to the constraints of royal protocol. She was independent, outspoken, and unafraid to share her opinions, traits that endeared her to Harry but set her at odds with the expectations of the monarchy. When Harry and Meghan's engagement was announced in November 2017, the world celebrated. The image of a prince marrying for love, regardless of tradition, was seen as a modern fairy tale. The couple's first interview together was filled with optimism, mutual admiration, and the promise of a new era for the royal family. Meghan spoke of her excitement to join the firm, as it is colloquially known, and Harry expressed his confidence that she would excel in her new role. Behind the scenes, however, tensions were already brewing. Palace insiders whispered about Meghan's perceived disregard for royal customs. She reportedly clashed with staff members, demanding changes to protocol that had been upheld for generations. Her insistence on addressing issues directly and her open advocacy for mental health and social justice sometimes rubbed traditionalists the wrong way. While Harry admired her boldness and willingness to challenge norms, others within the royal establishment saw it as disruptive and unrefined. Meghan's American roots were also a source of quiet consternation. Her independence, honed by years in Hollywood, clashed with the monarchy's demand for restraint and subtlety. She was accustomed to speaking her mind and standing up for herself, qualities that, while admirable in the United States, were viewed with suspicion in the more reserved corridors of Buckingham Palace. For some members of the firm, Meghan represented a challenge to the status quo, a force that could not be easily controlled or molded to fit royal expectations. But Harry remained steadfastly loyal. To him, Meghan was a beacon of hope and love, a partner who understood his struggles and shared his desire for a life unburdened by the weight of tradition. It was this shared longing for freedom that ultimately led to their departure from royal duties, a move that stunned the world and sent shockwaves through the monarchy. The announcement, dubbed Megxit, was unprecedented. In a joint statement, Harry and Meghan declared their intention to step back from their roles as senior royals, seeking financial independence and a life away from the relentless scrutiny of the British press. It was a decision that took not only the public by surprise, but reportedly blindsided senior members of the royal family as well. Sources claimed that neither Queen Elizabeth nor King Charles was informed of the announcement beforehand, sparking a flurry of emergency meetings and crisis talks within Buckingham Palace. To many, it seemed clear that Meghan had been the catalyst for this dramatic shift. The press, which had never fully embraced her, now painted her as the architect of Harry's departure, a woman who had lured a prince away from his birthright. Headlines screamed accusations of manipulation, with some tabloids branding her as a Duchess of Destruction. Pundits speculated that Harry, once considered the heart of the royal family, had been swept away by Meghan's influence, severing ties with his family in favor of a life in America. Yet, to others, Meghan was not the villain but the scapegoat. Her supporters pointed out the deeply ingrained biases within the British media, citing racially charged headlines and invasive paparazzi tactics that mirrored the treatment of Princess Diana decades earlier. Meghan's advocates argued that she had been unfairly targeted for her background and independence, subjected to a level of scrutiny far harsher than that of her royal counterparts. The public divide was stark. Some hailed Meghan as a symbol of progress and modernity, a woman unafraid to challenge the rigid traditions of the monarchy. Others saw her as a destabilizing force, an outsider who refused to conform to the expectations of her new role. Social media became a battleground, with hashtags like #TeamMeghan and #TeamRoyal trending with each new development. But while the public took sides, the impact on Harry and Charles's relationship was undeniable. Charles, who had always valued tradition and stability, saw Meghan's influence as a direct threat to the monarchy's integrity. Harry's willingness to forego his duties and titles for a life of independence was seen by some within the palace as a betrayal, not just of family, but of duty. To Charles, the decision represented a fundamental misunderstanding of what it meant to be royal. Palace insiders revealed that conversations between father and son grew increasingly strained in the months following their departure. While Charles attempted to extend support, both emotional and financial, Harry's continued criticism of the royal institution in public interviews drove a deeper wedge between them. The Oprah Winfrey interview in March 2021 was the breaking point. In it, Harry and Meghan alleged that a member of the royal family had raised concerns about the skin color of their unborn child. The claim was explosive, triggering a media frenzy and forcing the palace to release a rare public statement addressing the accusations. Charles, sources claimed, was deeply hurt by the interview, not just by the allegations of racism but by the very public nature of the grievances. For the monarchy, privacy and discretion had always been paramount. The notion that family disputes would be aired on international television was unthinkable. For Harry and Meghan, however, it was a necessary step in reclaiming their narrative. The fallout was swift and unforgiving. Royal duties were stripped, military titles were revoked, and the couple's patronages were redistributed among other working royals. The Queen herself issued a statement of regret, but also firm resolve. While we are saddened by their decision, they remain much-loved members of the family. It was a line that underscored the emotional complexity of the split, love tainted by disappointment, unity fractured by defiance. Through it all, Meghan stood by Harry's side. Her influence, undeniable and transformative, was seen by many as the driving force behind Harry's liberation from royal constraints. Whether viewed as a villain or a hero, Meghan had forever altered the course of royal history. Her insistence on independence, on speaking her truth regardless of consequence, had pushed Harry to make decisions that, while controversial, were deeply personal. For King Charles, the question remained, had Meghan been a catalyst for Harry's discontent, or simply a convenient scapegoat for a prince already disillusioned with royal life? The decision to revoke Harry's titles and privileges was not just a statement of authority, it was a declaration that the monarchy would not bend, even in the face of familial turmoil. Meghan's role in that decision, whether direct or circumstantial, would be debated for years to come. The decision to strip Prince Harry of his royal titles and privileges did not just send ripples through the royal family, it triggered a wave of legal and political implications that reached far beyond the gilded walls of Buckingham Palace. This unprecedented move by King Charles III was not merely symbolic. It carried tangible consequences that would redefine Harry's status on the global stage, impact his financial security, and alter his legal rights as a former member of the British monarchy. The British monarchy operates under a unique framework of legal rights and privileges that extend back centuries. Titles such as His Royal Highness and the honorary military distinctions bestowed upon Prince Harry were not just ceremonial. They carried with them distinct legal protections and privileges. One of the most significant was diplomatic immunity, a protection afforded to senior royals during international travels. This immunity had allowed Harry to navigate foreign territories with the protection of the crown, immune from certain legal prosecutions. With the revocation of his titles, these protections would be stripped away, leaving him vulnerable to legal challenges abroad. Furthermore, the removal of his status as a senior royal raised questions about his place in the line of succession. By birthright, Harry remains sixth in line to the throne. However, his newfound status as a private citizen complicates matters. Political analysts speculated that Harry's lack of royal duties and his public estrangement from the family could lead to a more permanent adjustment in the line of succession, an act that would require parliamentary approval under British law. While this drastic step had not yet been initiated, the whispers of political maneuvering hinted at a desire among royal advisers to solidify the monarchy's future without the shadow of controversy. There were also immediate financial implications to consider. Royal titles come with financial benefits, often funded through the sovereign grant and the Duchy of Cornwall. When Harry and Meghan initially stepped back from their roles as senior royals in 2020, they announced their intention to become financially independent, but retained a portion of security funding from Prince Charles's estate. With his titles officially stripped, Harry now faced the challenge of self-sufficiency in its truest form, completely independent of the royal purse. This dramatic shift forced Harry and Meghan to seek alternative sources of income, resulting in multi-million-dollar deals with media giants like Netflix and Spotify. Yet, even with these lucrative deals, financial independence was not without its costs. Security alone, which had once been covered by the crown, now rested squarely on Harry's shoulders. Estimates suggested that round-the-clock protection could cost upwards of $3 million annually, a sum that would have to be financed independently without the backing of British taxpayers. For Harry, a life once cushioned by privilege was now governed by the same financial realities faced by many of his California neighbors. The political implications extended beyond finances and security. The very act of stripping Harry's titles required careful navigation of British constitutional law. Although the monarchy is often viewed as symbolic, it operates under a structured legal framework. Royal titles and privileges are conferred by the reigning monarch, but are legally binding. For Charles to revoke Harry's titles, legal protocols had to be followed, and the decision required the backing of the Privy Council, an advisory body that counsels the monarch. The council, composed of senior politicians, judges, and bishops, convened in secrecy to deliberate on the matter. Their approval marked the first time in modern history that a senior royal had been stripped of his titles under direct royal command. This decision also sparked debates in Parliament. Opposition leaders questioned the implications of such a move, citing concerns over constitutional overreach. The British political landscape, already strained by economic and social issues, now found itself embroiled in discussions about the limits of royal power. Could the monarchy unilaterally strip a prince of his status without public or political oversight? Legal experts debated the issue, with some arguing that it set a dangerous precedent for royal authority. Others maintained that King Charles was well within his rights to protect the sanctity of the crown, even if it meant cutting ties with his own son. Internationally, the fallout was equally significant. Harry, once considered a diplomatic asset for the UK, now faced a new reality. His global influence, previously underpinned by his royal status, would have to stand on its own merit. No longer could he represent the crown in charitable endeavors or diplomatic events. For many organizations, Harry's value lay in his connection to the monarchy. Without it, his influence was questioned. Charities and global initiatives that once championed his involvement now reconsidered their affiliations, unsure of how his diminished status would impact their visibility and funding. The legal ramifications extended even further. As a non-working royal, Harry would now be subject to U.S. tax laws in full. Previously, his status afforded him certain tax protections, particularly regarding foreign income. His work with the Invictus Games, his partnerships with global charities, and his personal investments would now fall under stricter scrutiny from American tax agencies. Meghan, too, faced heightened financial oversight, as their joint ventures would be assessed under U.S. jurisdiction. It was a stark departure from the financial insulation they had once known. There was also the matter of citizenship. With Harry now residing permanently in California, discussions began to swirl around the possibility of American citizenship. Such a move would further complicate his legal ties to Britain, potentially impacting his place in the line of succession and his inheritance rights within the UK. Royal experts speculated that Harry's adoption of American citizenship would mark a permanent break from the monarchy, cementing his role as an outsider to the institution that once defined him. The political ramifications did not end there. With Harry's title stripped, discussions began to emerge about the necessity of revising royal succession laws. The 2013 Succession to the Crown Act, which allowed female heirs equal rights to the throne, could potentially be revisited to include stipulations about non-working royals. Political commentators suggested that the act could be amended to remove individuals who have formally abdicated their duties or distanced themselves from royal responsibilities. Such a move would effectively eliminate Harry from the line of succession, further solidifying Charles's legacy as a reformer of the monarchy. The ripple effects of King Charles's decision reached far beyond familial estrangement. It posed questions about the future of the monarchy, the limits of royal authority, and the evolving role of royalty in modern society. For Harry, the legal and political consequences of his father's decision marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where titles, privileges, and royal protection no longer shielded him from the realities of public life. What remained to be seen was how Harry would navigate this uncharted territory. His life, once mapped out by centuries of tradition, was now a blank slate, open to interpretation and opportunity. But without the royal banner to shield him, the road ahead would be unlike anything he had ever known. The monarchy had spoken, and the world waited with bated breath to see what Harry's next move would be. What remained to be seen was how Harry would navigate this uncharted territory. His life, once mapped out by centuries of tradition, was now a blank slate, open to interpretation and opportunity. But without the royal banner to shield him, the road ahead would be unlike anything he had ever known. The monarchy had spoken, and the world waited with bated breath to see what Harry's next move would be. The role of the media in the royal saga of Prince Harry and King Charles cannot be overstated. From the very beginning, the press played an instrumental role in both elevating Harry to global stardom and scrutinizing his every move with unrelenting intensity. The relationship between the British royal family and the media is a complex tapestry of cooperation, conflict, and, at times, outright hostility. For Harry, it was a love-hate relationship that evolved over time, eventually contributing to his decision to step away from royal duties entirely. When Harry was born in 1984, the media instantly fell in love with the cherubic prince. His playful antics and cheeky grin were staples on the front pages of newspapers around the world. Photographers, known as the Royal Rota, were granted special access to document the lives of the royal family, ensuring that the public felt connected to the Windsors in a way that was both intimate and strategic. This arrangement was part of an unspoken agreement. In exchange for public goodwill and protection, the royal family allowed certain aspects of their lives to be documented. However, the idyllic image of Harry as the joyful, carefree prince began to crumble during his teenage years. The media, ever hungry for scandal, latched onto his every misstep. Whether it was underage drinking, late-night parties, or that infamous Nazi costume at a costume party, Harry's rebellious streak was magnified under the press's unforgiving lens. Headlines screamed accusations of immaturity and disrespect, casting shadows over the young prince's image. The relationship only grew more strained with time. Harry's military service, which he had hoped would grant him some semblance of normalcy and privacy, was constantly disrupted by media leaks. His deployment to Afghanistan in 2007 had to be cut short after foreign media broke an embargo, revealing his location and putting his life, and the lives of his fellow soldiers, at risk. It was a bitter pill for Harry to swallow, a stark reminder that his life was not his own, that even in the midst of war, he could not escape the prying eyes of the press. This growing resentment came to a head with Harry's relationship with Meghan Markle. The media frenzy surrounding their courtship was relentless. Meghan, a biracial American actress, was thrust into the harsh glare of the British tabloids, many of which scrutinized her every move with an intensity that bordered on invasive. Tabloid stories speculated on her family background, criticized her fashion choices, and even went so far as to question her intentions. Headlines like "Harry's girl is almost straight outta Compton" and "Meghan's exotic DNA" were plastered across front pages, igniting accusations of racism and bias within the British press. For Harry, this was a haunting echo of the media treatment his mother, Princess Diana, had endured. The parallels were unmistakable, an outsider entering the royal fold, subjected to vicious media scrutiny, and struggling under the weight of public expectation. Harry, who had never fully healed from the trauma of Diana's death in a car crash while being chased by paparazzi, grew increasingly protective of Meghan. His distrust of the press transformed into outright hostility, culminating in multiple lawsuits against British tabloids for invasion of privacy and defamation. The couple's battle with the press reached its peak with their decision to step back from royal duties in 2020. Their official statement made it clear that media treatment had played a significant role in their choice to leave. They announced their intention to move away from the traditional royal rota system, which grants British tabloids preferential access to royal events, opting instead for more independent media engagement. This decision sent shockwaves through both the palace and the media landscape. It was a direct challenge to the long-standing arrangement between the monarchy and the press, a relationship that had been carefully maintained for decades. The media's response was swift and severe. Accusations of hypocrisy flooded headlines, with critics pointing out that Harry and Meghan continued to use their royal status for commercial deals, even as they distanced themselves from royal responsibilities. Pundits questioned whether their quest for privacy was genuine or simply a means to control their own narrative. This skepticism was amplified when the couple signed multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix and Spotify, projects that promised intimate glimpses into their lives and personal struggles. The Oprah Winfrey interview in March 2021 was perhaps the most dramatic display of media power in shaping the royal narrative. Watched by millions around the globe, Harry and Meghan laid bare their grievances against the royal family, accusing unnamed members of racism and revealing mental health struggles that had gone unaddressed. The interview was a masterclass in media strategy, crafted, calculated, and delivered with the intent to reshape public perception. Harry and Meghan were no longer mere victims of press intrusion. They were now actively using the media as a weapon in their battle against the institution. The British tabloids fired back with a vengeance. Articles dissected every claim, questioning the validity of their statements and accusing the couple of fabricating stories for sympathy. Royal commentators took to television and radio, expressing disbelief and frustration at what they viewed as betrayal. For King Charles and the rest of the royal family, the interview represented a breach of the unspoken code of silence, a blatant disregard for the principle that royal disputes are handled behind closed doors, not aired on international television. The fallout from the interview triggered a public relations nightmare for Buckingham Palace. In response, the Queen issued a carefully worded statement, expressing sorrow over the revelations while maintaining that recollections may vary. It was a subtle yet powerful rebuke, signaling that the royal family was not in complete agreement with Harry and Meghan's portrayal of events. The statement, brief and devoid of elaboration, spoke volumes about the palace's commitment to maintaining its dignified silence, despite mounting pressure to respond in detail. As the months rolled on, the media continued to shape the narrative, driving public opinion and influencing perceptions of both Harry and King Charles. Polls indicated that public support for the couple had plummeted in the UK, even as their popularity surged in the United States. Analysts noted that Harry and Meghan's media strategy, while effective in America, had alienated many of their supporters back home, where loyalty to the crown remained strong. King Charles, meanwhile, maintained a stoic silence, refusing to engage in public mudslinging despite mounting pressure. His approach was seen as an effort to preserve the dignity of the monarchy, even as his youngest son continued to speak out. For Charles, engaging in a media battle would have signaled weakness, an admission that the royal family was susceptible to public opinion. By remaining silent, he projected strength and stability, a contrast to the volatile media storms swirling around Harry and Meghan. The role of the media in the narrative of Harry's title revocation is undeniable. It was not just a backdrop but a central player, influencing public perception, driving royal decision-making, and amplifying the drama unfolding behind palace gates. The media had become a battleground, a place where reputations were made and destroyed, and where the struggle for control over the royal story played out on a global stage. When the news broke that King Charles had officially revoked all of Prince Harry's royal titles and privileges, it sent shockwaves through Britain and beyond. For many, the announcement felt surreal, a decisive action that not only redefined Harry's status but reshaped the narrative of the modern British monarchy. It was a bold move that ignited intense debates across living rooms, newsrooms, and social media platforms. The reaction was immediate, visceral, and deeply divided, exposing the fractures within the nation's perception of the royal family and its role in modern society. Across the United Kingdom, opinions clashed sharply. Traditionalists hailed the decision as long overdue, a necessary step to preserve the sanctity and integrity of the crown. For these staunch monarchists, Harry's public criticisms of the royal institution, his departure to the United States, and his continued media presence were seen as betrayals of his birthright. Many argued that his actions, including the tell-all interviews and lucrative media deals, had damaged the monarchy's image on the global stage. Revoking his titles, they believed, was a way to restore respect and maintain the dignity of the institution. "We've had enough of the constant mudslinging," stated a local shopkeeper in Windsor, just steps away from the iconic castle where royal events have unfolded for centuries. "If you walk away from the family, you walk away from the titles. You can't have it both ways." Her sentiments were echoed by many who saw Harry's criticisms as disloyal and self-serving, especially given the privileges he had been afforded since birth. Among older generations, the decision was seen as a return to traditional values, a firm stance by King Charles to uphold the responsibilities that come with being a member of the royal family. To them, the monarchy represented stability, tradition, and a sense of national pride. Harry's departure and subsequent allegations against his family were viewed as direct threats to that stability, making Charles's decision not just acceptable but necessary. Yet, the response was far from unanimous. Among younger Britons, particularly those who had grown up watching Harry evolve from the spare to a global humanitarian, the decision was met with outrage. Social media platforms exploded with criticism, with hashtags like #JusticeForHarry and #MonarchyModernization trending across Twitter and Instagram. For this demographic, Harry was not just a prince, he was a symbol of breaking free from archaic expectations. His openness about mental health struggles, his advocacy for social issues, and his willingness to challenge the status quo resonated deeply. "He's the only one who's been real," said a university student during a televised panel discussion. "He spoke about mental health. He spoke about the pressure of the institution. And for that, he's being punished? It's backward." Her voice was joined by many others who saw the monarchy's move as an attempt to silence dissent and maintain a facade of perfection. For them, stripping Harry of his titles was not an act of preservation but an act of censorship. Outside of Britain, reactions varied dramatically. In America, where Harry and Meghan had established their new life, public sentiment leaned heavily in their favor. American media outlets framed the decision as punitive and unnecessary, a stark contrast to the more measured response from British networks. Morning talk shows and primetime specials featured analysts who described the monarchy as outdated and out of touch, criticizing King Charles for prioritizing tradition over family. The decision, they argued, painted the monarchy as rigid and unforgiving, unwilling to adapt to modern values. The fact that Harry spoke out about mental health and the challenges of royal life should have been celebrated, not punished, stated a political commentator on a popular American news channel. This just shows how out of step the monarchy is with the real world. The narrative overseas shifted, casting Harry as a victim of institutional rigidity rather than a rogue prince. The transatlantic divide only deepened as celebrities and public figures voiced their support. High-profile personalities such as Oprah Winfrey, Ellen DeGeneres, and Serena Williams publicly backed Harry and Meghan, condemning the royal family's decision as archaic. Social media platforms were flooded with supportive messages, calling for reform within the monarchy and praising Harry's bravery for speaking his truth. American sympathy grew stronger, positioning Harry and Meghan as advocates for freedom and modernity in contrast to the perceived stuffiness of the British royal establishment. In the Commonwealth, reactions were more complex. Countries such as Australia and Canada, where discussions about independence from the crown had already been simmering, saw the decision as further justification for severing ties. Political analysts speculated that the move could reignite debates around republicanism, with citizens questioning the relevance of a monarchy that seemed increasingly disconnected from its younger members. In Australia, a prominent senator called for a renewed push for independence, stating that the monarchy's treatment of Harry was emblematic of its outdated practices. Even within the UK, regional divides began to emerge. In Scotland and Northern Ireland, where independence movements have historically been strong, Harry's removal from royal status was viewed with skepticism. Political leaders suggested that it demonstrated an unwillingness by the crown to modernize and accommodate dissenting voices within its own family. If they can't accept their own blood for speaking out, what chance do the rest of us have? Questioned a member of the Scottish Parliament during a heated debate. Protests erupted in London, albeit modest in size, with demonstrators holding signs that read, "Monarchy needs modernization," and "Support Harry, support truth." Although these protests were small compared to the outpouring of public grief after the passing of Princess Diana, they symbolized a growing unrest among segments of the population who felt that the monarchy was failing to evolve. The palace, meanwhile, remained silent. Buckingham Palace released only a brief statement acknowledging the decision as a matter of royal protocol, without elaborating on the specifics. King Charles, despite mounting pressure to explain his decision, chose to remain out of the public eye, focusing instead on state matters and royal duties. His silence was interpreted by supporters as dignified restraint but criticized by opponents as avoidance. For Harry and Meghan, life in California carried on. Public appearances continued, their projects moved forward, and their media presence remained strong. But the shadow of the decision loomed large, casting uncertainty on their future relationships with the monarchy. Would reconciliation ever be possible? Would Harry's children be granted royal titles despite their father's exclusion? These questions hung heavily in the air, unanswered and unresolved. The public reaction to King Charles's decision to revoke Harry's titles was more than just a reflection of personal opinions. It was a litmus test for the monarchy's relevance in the 21st century. It exposed generational divides, questioned the monarchy's ability to modernize, and ignited debates over the institution's place in contemporary society. For King Charles, it was a decisive act meant to preserve tradition. For Harry, it was the final nail in the coffin of his royal identity. And for the public, it was yet another chapter in a saga that had become as much theirs as it was the Windsors. As the dust began to settle following King Charles's historic decision to revoke Prince Harry's royal titles and privileges, questions arose about the influence of the late Queen Elizabeth II. For decades, she had been the unwavering symbol of the British monarchy, steady, resilient, and unyielding in the face of adversity. Her passing marked the end of an era, but the shadow of her legacy loomed large over the decisions of her son, King Charles. Many wondered, did she foresee this moment of unprecedented royal separation? Queen Elizabeth was known for her discretion and composure, never allowing the strains of public life to crack the surface of her regal exterior. Her sense of duty was absolute, a quality she instilled in her children and grandchildren with unyielding resolve. From a young age, Harry had been molded under her watchful eye, growing up amidst the grandeur of palace life and the constant reminders of his duty to the crown. His grandmother was a beacon of stability, a figure who represented continuity and tradition in a rapidly changing world. But behind the facade of royal elegance, Queen Elizabeth was also a realist. She understood the changing tides of public opinion and the evolving nature of the monarchy in the modern age. It is said that she was deeply involved in matters of succession and the preservation of the royal institution, often meeting privately with Charles to discuss the future of the crown. Those who were close to her claimed that she had long been aware of the growing tensions between Harry and the rest of the family, and that she had expressed concerns over the impact it might have on the monarchy's reputation. Her concerns reportedly began to solidify around the time of Harry's engagement to Meghan Markle. Unlike any royal bride before her, Meghan represented a break from tradition, a biracial American actress with a career of her own. For the Queen, who had always valued tradition and stability, Meghan's entrance into the royal family was seen as both a refreshing shift and a potential challenge. Though she welcomed Meghan warmly and made visible efforts to integrate her into royal life, those within the palace whispered of the Queen's reservations. Palace insiders spoke of private meetings between the Queen and her senior advisors, where discussions about the future role of Harry and Meghan took place long before Megxit became a reality. The Queen was pragmatic. She understood that change was inevitable, but she also recognized the fragility of the monarchy's image. Despite her public support, there were hints of tension, small moments captured during official engagements, slight hesitations during public appearances. The Queen's foresight extended beyond mere speculation. It was reported that she had quietly begun preparations for a scenario where Harry and Meghan would step back from their royal duties. In 2018, just months after their wedding, she initiated discussions with senior courtiers about the logistics of a possible royal exit. Financial arrangements were explored, alternative living arrangements considered, and even discussions around security and patronages were mapped out in the event that the couple chose independence. To those within her inner circle, it was clear the Queen saw the writing on the wall. Her concerns deepened after the birth of Harry and Meghan's first child, Archie, in 2019. The Queen, ever the traditionalist, had hoped that parenthood would tether Harry to his royal responsibilities, much as it had with William. However, as Harry and Meghan began to voice their frustrations more publicly, particularly concerning the pressures of royal life and media scrutiny, Elizabeth reportedly grew more anxious. Sources close to the palace revealed that she held a private audience with Harry at Windsor Castle shortly before the couple's shocking announcement to step back. It was during this conversation that she is said to have expressed her fears about the consequences of turning away from royal life, emphasizing the weight of duty and the legacy of the crown. Nevertheless, the decision was made. Harry and Meghan departed for North America, leaving behind their roles as senior royals. For the Queen, it was a moment of profound sadness. She had lost not just a grandson to distance, but a key member of her royal household. In her Christmas address that year, she spoke carefully of family and forgiveness, words that many interpreted as subtle nods to the ongoing royal rift. It was a rare moment of vulnerability for the monarch, a glimpse into the personal toll the separation had taken. Even after their departure, the Queen remained a figure of calm resolution. While media outlets speculated about the family feud, she maintained a steady hand, ensuring that the monarchy's public face remained unblemished. Behind the scenes, however, preparations were quietly being made. She began to shift more responsibilities to Charles, a signal that her long reign was entering its final phase. King Charles would soon be called upon to make his mark, and the Queen ensured he was prepared for the challenges that lay ahead, including the difficult decision regarding Harry's titles. Before her passing, Queen Elizabeth reportedly left behind a series of letters, personal notes intended for members of her family, including Harry. These letters, according to royal insiders, were written with the kind of foresight only a monarch of her experience could possess. In them, she expressed her hopes for reconciliation, her belief in the strength of family, and her understanding of Harry's need to find his own path. But she was also firm about the importance of duty. She is said to have written to Harry directly, urging him to remember the weight of his responsibilities, even as he forged his own way. Her final years were marked by a quiet sense of preparation. Those closest to her remarked on her increasing focus on legacy and stability. She took steps to solidify William and Kate's positions within the family, ensuring that the line of succession remained strong and unchallenged. In public appearances, she made a point to present a united front, often accompanied by Charles and William, reinforcing the continuity of the monarchy. It was clear she wanted no room for ambiguity or weakness once her reign had ended. When she passed, King Charles inherited not only the throne but the responsibility of her legacy. It was her vision of a strong, resilient monarchy that guided his decision to remove Harry's titles. For Charles, it was not just an act of discipline but a fulfillment of his mother's expectations, an acknowledgement that the monarchy had to remain steadfast, even in the face of personal loss. Did Queen Elizabeth foresee this? Many royal experts believe she did. Her careful maneuvering in her final years, her candid conversations with senior aides, and her quiet preparations for Harry and Meghan's departure all suggested she had anticipated the need for decisive action. For her, the preservation of the monarchy was paramount, even if it meant severing ties with those she loved. As the world looked on, one thing was clear: Queen Elizabeth's legacy lived on not just through tradition, but through the firm hand of her successor, King Charles. Her influence, though no longer visible, remained woven into the very fabric of the decisions that would shape the monarchy for generations to come. The decision to strip Prince Harry of his royal titles and privileges did not occur in a vacuum. The reverberations were felt throughout the royal family, shaking the very foundations of the monarchy. The aftermath of King Charles's decision prompted a recalibration of roles, responsibilities, and perceptions within the House of Windsor, leaving each member to confront the shifting tides of tradition and modernity. For Prince William, the decision marked a significant turning point. As the heir to the throne, William had long been groomed for kingship under the watchful eyes of both Queen Elizabeth